Before I begin the presentation, I want to remind the board the genesis of how this topic even came up. In December of 2008, we presented the June 30th, 2008 actuarial evaluation. And if you look to the very last point made in that presentation, we stated, due to the investment climate, June 30th, 2009 will be most challenging, and these extraordinary times mandate some discussion in the coming months. We made a promise to the board that we would come back and have that discussion, and that is what today is about. Chart above there is the combined trust assets of SD-SERS, meaning it includes the city, the Unified Port District, and the Airport Authority. The system had assets of $4.7 billion on June 30th, 2008. That's market value, with a 7.75% assumed return and the cash flows that the system's experienced. We would have expected the assets to grow to $4.98 billion. On June 30th, 2009, those assets came in at $3.77 billion. The market value loss that took place was $1.21 billion. With your current smoothing, which is 25% of the loss, plus the quarter being applied, the 120, the actuarial value of the trust fund, the smooth value, was 4.96 on June 30th, 2008. We expected it to grow to 5.2, and we're sitting at 4.52 after applying the current methods of smoothing in the 120. So the measured loss is $680 million, and that would be amortized over 15 years. Impact on SD-SERS membership, salary reductions, which in turn lead to lower ultimate pensions, and potential layoffs. I know with the state, we already have furloughs for all state employees, but what typically happens in a pension plan situation, particularly catastrophic, will be pressures on the membership in other areas. We already have a new hire plan. That's pension benefits are reduced, and lower pay increases. For the retirees, there will be no impact on pensions. There may be pressure to reduce COLAs and other non-pension benefits. Without any change, the city's ARC, annual required contribution for fiscal year 11, is expected to increase by nearly 50%, from $154 million to $224 million. And by fiscal year 2015, it will be more than doubled at $318 million. The unfunded actuarial liability also is expected to increase by more than 50% to $2 billion in fiscal year 11, and by 100% or doubling by 2015 at $2.62 billion. No changes. The upside, you'll maximize SD-SERS funded level. That's the ratio of assets to liabilities, and it requires no changes to the current methods and procedures. And the downside is whether you believe this could force the plan sponsors to take other actions that will be detrimental to SD-SERS membership. Alternative methodologies, the upside, it lowers the chance that the plan sponsor would take actions detrimental to the membership. A more reasonable way to deal with an unprecedented market downturn, and reflective of what other plans are doing. And we're not saying that because other plans are doing it, you should do it, but the fact that other plans are doing it should give you some measure of confidence that you're not doing it on your own. On the downside, it does defer today's cost to the future. It does result in a lower funding ratio. And by changing for June 30th, 2009 valuation, will future valuation methodology be more subject to change? Three options again. Lowering the smoothing percentage. Right now, you recognize 25% of a loss or gain in any year. You could lower it to 20%, 15, or 10%. You're currently amortizing your investment losses over 15 years. One could extend that period. You could widen or remove the 80-120 quarter. Again, you're at 131%, if not for the quarter. And any of these changes could be applied temporarily. And I think given the fact that the only rationale for making a change would be the unprecedented market return, we would recommend, if you consider a change, that it would be just limited to the investment results of this past year. The smoothing period. It's currently at 25%, so each year, whatever loss or gain you have, we'll recognize 1/4 of that. If we lower it to 10%, it's not going to have any impact because you've got the 120% quarter. So as long as you have the 120% quarter there, this is has absolutely no impact. And we think doing both, removing the quarter as well as lowering to 10%, would probably not comply with the actuarial standards of practice. But just to give you an idea, if the 120% quarter is widened and removed, the impact of a 10% smoothing in the arc would reduce the arc by $50+ million per year and growing. Right now, you have a percentage of smoothing, but for purpose of this chart, that percentage will be converted to 4 years. It's 1/4. And the majority of plans are in that category of 4 to 5 years. And you see there's CalPERS sticking out at the very end at 15-year smoothing. And we have 7 systems that have absolutely no smoothing. Lengthening the unfunded liability amortization period from 15 to 30 years. And Mark, I'm just going back to your question about laws and rules. I already stated on the first one, to lower the smoothing percentage to 10% would require removing the quarter, and we think doing both, we'd be uncomfortable whether that meant the ASOPs. So we would take that off. On the lengthening the amortization period, this meets GASB ARC standards, but it would have a very small impact, only a $4 million reduction in 2011, unless you also remove the negative amortization requirement at the same time. There's a requirement that says that you must pay at least interest on the unfunded, so that negates going to 30 years. Going 30 years out would put you into negative amortization territory. But if you had a 1-year suspension of the negative amortization, the impact would be significant, about $25 million. Widening or removing the asset quarter. Your current quarter, as I mentioned before, limits the actuarial value of assets to be no greater than 120% of market value. And I've already stated, without a quarter, your actuarial value of assets would be about 131%. This 120 quarter is something that is required in the private sector for ERISA, and typically because with private companies there's possibilities of bankruptcy. Quarters are not specifically required by the actuarial standards of practice, but they're clearly suggested, and we're going to have a slide that follows that walks you through that. Of our clients, large clients, public sector, half of them have quarters, half don't. And of those with quarters, the top range is between 105 to 120%. And all those that have the quarters are examining alternatives.